around. Anyhow, I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on a theory that I put forth in recent videos. I think it's more than a theory. I think it's more than a hypothesis. I think it's blatantly obvious what's been done, and for somebody who's spent much time in contemplation, I think it's self-evident why it's been done. In previous videos, I've talked about how the brain is firewalled off in humans, and that at the highest levels of intelligence, human intelligence, we use about 20%. The average people in the low teens, give or take, that was done by design. They see all this junk DNA they call junk, or they tell us is junk. It's just DNA they haven't figured out how to turn on yet, because whatever created us used its DNA to modify us, and its DNA is more advanced, and it couldn't have beings running around advancing at exponential levels, so that when it came back, it was faced with a whole bunch of beings that were close, at, or beyond, well, their level. Something along those lines seems very plausible. So they shut a whole bunch of stuff off. And then the inward journey's been firewalled off. And I would say to varying degrees for everybody, there are various anomalous things that can take place, if you will, that can help somebody maybe punch through some of the barriers in the brain or the mind that have been firewalled off, or punch through the barriers of the inward journey. As you can see, as we can tell, monks and Hindus and yogis and those that do those meditative things is what I mean. They seem to have figured something out. For me, I don't get much. I never have, even after going to a Buddhist monastery and spending a period of time doing it. So it was easy for me to add into my last video explanation that there's been a firewall put in there, because it's not easy to do, and I think that's evidenced by the fact that the world itself does not have a meditative practice. It is not done by the majority. I mean, and remove the context of the herd and doing anything that the majority does. It's not something that humans commonly do, because I believe that most humans hit that barrier. And, well, we're not wired with any innate knowledge of what it takes to do that meditative thing, to find something inside of us, to find that beacon within us that says, you're here for a reason, you agreed to this, this is all for a purpose, you know, yada, 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 anything, so that when the human, if the human should rise in knowledge, awareness, consciousness, induce enough suffering in its own life that it starts asking bigger questions, whatever that manifestation may be within that being's experience of life that causes those things to take place, that equation should induce a frequency. That frequency opening the doorway, so to speak, or turning on the lights, like if the lights went out in an airplane and you had that little trail that goes to the exit doors, something. But none of that's been done. None of that's been done. Those people that have figured what they've figured out have clawed, scratched, sacrificed blood, sweat, and tears, etc., in their own lives, in their own way, to acquire the knowledge that they have, to experience the breakthroughs that they have. This shit isn't easy, folks. There's just nothing easy. There's a few, obviously, that might, well, not obviously, there's a few that may very well experience a degree of ease in stepping into some of this stuff. But I wanted to point out something else that has recently become more clear to me about the design flaws in us. And again, this isn't a big showcase of negative, 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 you know, pull you down, pull you down, pull you down. It's trying to showcase my analysis of the aspects of the human being that we're aware of, that I'm aware of, that limit us on levels that few people see. So, we were designed in such a way that most humans will not engage in prolonged periods of deep mental thought, mental reflection, deep analysis of things, contemplation, in deep modes of contemplation, engaging in critical thought for a sustained period of time. It's the most amazing thing. I've heard it said I forget what the sources are, but some of you may have, this might ring a bell with some of you, that big, strong, strapping, brutish men, all muscle bound and physically fit, would prefer to toil in the field, 16 hours of labor, versus spending prolonged periods of time engaged in mental processes, mental thought, mental reflection, analysis of things, contemplation of the world, of all the things they've been told, critically thinking about, everything. This is not the state of mind of most men to engage in this. And when they even begin the process of it, it becomes challenging because it's so draining. That's the point. The process of engaging in that is really draining. It requires a lot of energy. Like, so much so that it's measurable because you can burn calories. Yeah, you can burn calories and they can measure this stuff. So, think about this for a second. You ever spent long periods of time in deep mental reflection, etc., and needed to shut off after you were done, or take a power nap after 3 or 4 hours of? And when I say, I'm not just referring to being engaged, being partially present. I'm talking full on engaged, like so focused and so deep in your head as far as analyzing, thinking, following the vein of thought, and then all of the capillaries that feed that vein of thought to analyze all of that stuff. It's a lot of work. And that analogy may not fit how everybody else does it, but I think what I'm saying should make sense to most people. Most humans shy away from long periods of deep mental reflection, mental processes, critical thought analysis, etc., etc. And I would suggest to you that there's more than one reason for that. I would suggest to you that, number one, most men do what the hell they're told anyway, so it causes them, because they're in that mindset, to not really engage a whole lot in critical thought. But when we do go down those roads of spending time in contemplation, all of a sudden we begin to ask questions that we might not otherwise. We begin to ask bigger questions. And then all of a sudden, the mind being what it is, the human psyche being what it is, we will begin to find the answers, whether we know it or not. And then we'll start finding answers in the pursuit of being in deep mental thought, reflection. It lends itself to the pursuit of the truth. That's something I probably should have said is the context of what I'm talking about. In the pursuit of the truth, many people will fall short of ever getting there because of how much work it is, how much mental work it is, etc., etc. And a lot of people are mentally weak. It's not criticizing them. We've been conditioned to be that way. And me, just by my makeup and the life that I've had, has kind of forced me to be this analytical creature. But not a lot of people are. Not as many people are. That should. It shouldn't be a character trait of, as I said before, the Aquarian Gemini-minded human because, of the astrological thing. It should be a character trait of every single solitary human being that is a sentient being with a soul. That we engage in deep, prolonged periods of mental thought to better ourselves, to understand, to comprehend, to reflect, to analyze, to make decisions, etc., etc. This would help the human to develop. But here's the point that I'm making. If and when a man does these things, it's very draining. It burns calories. It requires an extraordinary amount of energy, to the point where you can literally, your brain can shut off. I mean, like to the point where you've reached saturation level, you just can't take in anymore, or your attention span starts to go away, even though there's all kinds of manifestations of how you reach your limit as well. We're very limited in the fact that, number one, it's draining for us, and we can only take in so much. All of this is by design. It is absolutely by design to slow us down. That governor thing. To slow us down, like a governor on a car, to absolutely prevent us from being able to exceed a certain limitations. Now, could a governor malfunction? Sure. Could the car go faster than the governor is designed for it or set for it to because the governor somehow malfunctions? Or doesn't do exactly what it was designed to do because maybe it wasn't installed totally right or something? Lots of varying anomalies can happen. But by design, we're designed to, how do I say this? We're designed in such a way that it's very draining for us to engage in this process. That's why I think so many people won't do it. One of the bigger reasons why. And another reason why has to do with the psychological aspect of human beings. Most human beings are very psychologically fragile, and they adhere to their paradigm. They're very stuck to their paradigm. They're very attached to their paradigm. Humans don't like having their paradigm broken, shattered, rattled, or even knocked on. Drop something on somebody that gives their paradigm a good old kick in the ass and see if they don't have some sort of visceral response or you know what I mean? It's just not something that people like because psychologically, we are kind of a fragile little bunch. And while we may have gray hair, we could still be psychologically children. It's amazing. Or emotionally children and had to grow up in certain ways because we, went out into the world. But aspects of us that actually matter, the psychological body, the emotional body, may be very immature. And this is prevalent throughout all of us. It's interesting how this psychological thing actually works. Now, let me shift on that a little bit more. In the process of being such fragile little bitches on so many levels when it comes to having our paradigm shattered, and what will do that most rapidly, I believe, induce those types of scenarios, is the pursuit of the truth. That's the point. Is the pursuit of the truth, is the recognizing that most of, if not all of, everything you've ever been handed has been a lie, has been fabricated, has been designed to confine your mind to a box. And you're like, all right, I don't know if it's all true, it's partially true, some of it's true, but I know there's some shit in there. I'm throwing the whole fucking thing away. I'm going to figure it out myself. And then you begin the course of studying the truth. You still have the conditioning and the belief systems in your mind for the most part. Therefore, as you pursue the process of seeking the truth, taking in what you need to do, disseminating it, spitting out the shit, and finding your diamonds, your nuggets of what resonates deep in your soul as truth, if you will, the ego mind tends to fire up. This aspect of the human psyche that we don't actually have, direct control over. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And in spiritual circles, we seek to, kill this aspect of ourselves or do what we need to do to watch it die, called, what was that? Oh, yeah, ego death. Ego death. We do this thing where we want to kill, murder, watch die, cause to die, induce the death of an aspect of our psyche that we have, whether it was given to us on purpose or it was a split when humanity fell or something. We have this aspect of the ego mind that kicks in, and here's why that's an issue. This is just one of the reasons that ties into this thinking man thing, is that when the man breaks through the barriers of being a big chicken shit from engaging in deep, long periods of thinking, and he gets into challenging his own paradigm, challenging his own belief systems in the pursuit of seeking the truth. Or somebody else is presenting him or her information that is challenging the paradigm, etc., etc. Here's where the ego mind steps in the process to create confusion, among other things. See, the ego mind, they say, tries to protect us. The ego mind, they say, is there to protect you. So when something as significant as my perception of the reality I live in could be wrong. I could have been lied to. I think I'm smart. And this little game that goes on in the mind where, quote unquote, in an effort to make me feel significant in an effort to make me feel like I'm important. This is some of the roles that the ego has in the human mind. And for better or for worse, this part of the mind fires off. And most of us don't have any direct control over it. So, to learn the truth, you're going to take in a lot of shit that's going to challenge your paradigm. And the ego mind steps in and says, no, I know better than that. I'm significant. I couldn't have been lied to. I must have some truth. And it causes this confusion. I've seen it in other people who are otherwise intelligent people, but are stuck in this mental barrier of being able to accept a piece of truth that so profoundly defies this anchored belief that they have that was largely given to them through a mechanism of indoctrination that anchored into their psyche when they were young. Right. And why it becomes so difficult for the human being that is otherwise rational, reasonable, intelligent to grasp that fact and look at themselves and the anchors that are deeply in the mind. And then this ego mind jumps in. And it's not always a conscious thing. Many people will flat out reject info that defies that which is already contained within their carefully constructed mental box. You see what I mean? That's that ego mind. It's going to be denying. And there's a myriad of reasons why it will, and one of them is it has to feel significant. And if everything I've been told is a lie, I have to accept, or that brings into play, am I stupid? Am I dumb? Or any number of just weird psychological games or gymnastic type games that aren't necessarily healthy that go on. This prevents men from doing things. This prevents humans in as much as it has the effect in many cases of causing people to quit or being a source of why people quit. Because the box that's been handed to us by those that have an interest in crafting and molding our perception of reality has been very, very, very carefully constructed. And the aspects of it that matter the most, to such a large degree, have been given to us when we're kids, when we're young, when these deep belief systems are forming and solidifying. It's why the Jesuits say, give me a child until it's 7, or give me a boy until he's 7, I'll give you the man, or something like that. So we have this mechanism of we are drained like batteries when we start thinking. Men will run away from long periods of thinking and rather do 16 labors of toil in the field. When we get to the point that we have exercised those mental muscles, or we are seeking a bigger truth, it's really draining and requires a lot of energy. When we get to the point where we've built up our energy, we've built up the mental muscles, and we're on that path, then the ego mind wants to step into a lot of people's experience and cause them confusion in the process of accepting that which doesn't fit in the box or defies the belief systems, etc., etc. And wow, it just makes it so that on a lot of levels, a lot of folks will chase their tails like dogs, trying to figure shit out. I've done plenty of my own spinning, chasing my tail, thinking my tail was the answer. I think we all do it when we get to that point of wanting more information, more truth. I think it's an inevitability in the human process of developing his mind, his mental processes, his faculties of analysis and reason and logic and deduction, intuition, all that stuff. There's going to be confusion while you're building all those muscles. Yeah, okay. But I don't think the ego's doing that to help you. I think the ego's doing that as a mechanism to prevent you, as a mechanism to slow you down. The same way we can only take in so much information before we have to shut off, slow down, stop doing it because it's too much. It's draining to us. It takes a lot of our energy. We can take a power nap after the fact, or just, you're engaged for a period and you just got to disconnect from it and just go shut off somewhere, even if it's just like sitting and watching birds go by or something, just something to kind of shut off because it's overwhelming. Combine some of that stuff in certain scenarios with high emotions, it's even more draining to the human. It's kind of interesting. It seems to me that what I've illustrated here in 20 minutes and a half almost kind of fits the equations that I was sharing before about these major character flaws that were designed into humans on purpose. Now, sure, we can identify them and work around them, strengthen ourselves, etc., etc. There are workarounds, I suppose. Just like in tech, you find a problem, you find a bug, you find a flaw, you until you replace the whole thing or update it, you figure out a workaround. There are workarounds to this kind of thing. Not everybody knows what they are, and those that do, then there's this whole thing, well, hey, I know, but it gives me power, and I don't want you to have power, so I'm not going to share it with you. Yeah, because it keeps me in power, and it feeds my ego, it makes me feel more significant. Yeah, that happens a lot on this planet. It's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, boy, never mind. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So anyway, little mind dump about some of these massively obvious design flaws. The more I analyze this thing, the more I think about this thing. For anybody that really believes that there was some loving, benevolent deity, loving, benevolent creator, loving, benevolent anything that had an intention of creating something that it was going to grow and cultivate, etc., like some loving parent. We're told the religious shit and the indoctrination that God loves you and we're his children and la la la, and he gave his only begotten son for you because he loves you so much. Oh, what a fucking crock of shit. And I can't believe there are that many people in Christianity and Islam and all these other religions that buy into that sack of shit. It's not even horse shit or cow shit. I mean, it's so much more putrid and vile than that. It's not even funny. It really is amazing what we as a species will accept as the norm, what we will get used to. The people that are running the show, they've probably been in observation of that. Let's see what these bastards can take. Let's see how much we can do to them. Let's see where their limits are. And look at us. We just seem to adapt rather than force something out of our experience that doesn't fucking belong here because it's so malignant, toxic, and absurd on its face that it even exists. Nope. We just somehow become acceptant of it, tolerant of it, look the other way, become used to it. And ultimately we keep doing that. And we're going to get overloaded with that shit and it's going to start killing us. Well, it might be doing that now. Anyway, I'm digressing. So, food for thought. Mind dump for the day. Something to tickle your critical thinker.